Catherine Walsh tapped her expensive heel against the polished airport floor, checking her watch for the third time in 5 minutes. Atlanta International Airport buzzed with morning travelers, but all Catherine could focus on was how each passing minute threatened her tight schedule. The 45-year-old marketing executive adjusted her designer blazer and sighed loudly, making sure those around her understood her irritation. "Excuse me," she said sharply to a young airport employee who hurried past. "Do you know why the security lines are moving so slowly today? Some of us have important meetings to attend." The employee apologized quickly before rushing off, leaving Catherine to roll her eyes and mutter under her breath. This trip to New York was crucial. Her presentation to potential clients could mean a promotion, something she felt was long overdue. Everything needed to be perfect, starting with an on-time departure. After clearing security, Catherine made her way to the first-class lounge, her carry-on suitcase rolling smoothly behind her. She presented her premium membership card with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. Inside, she selected a quiet corner seat, ordered a sparkling water with lemon, and opened her laptop to review her presentation one final time. The piece lasted exactly 12 minutes. "Mom, can I have another juice box?" A young boy's voice broke through Catherine's concentration. She looked up, irritated at the interruption. A family had settled in the seating area across from her. A father in his early 40s wearing a comfortable but well-worn sweatshirt. A mother about the same age in simple jeans and a blouse, a teenage girl with headphones, and the source of the disruption, a young boy around 10 years old who seemed unable to sit still. Catherine watched as the boy bounced on his seat, action figure in hand, making whooshing sounds as he flew the toy through the air. His mother gently reminded him to use his indoor voice while his father handed over another juice box from their bag. "People really bring their entire household to the lounge these days," Catherine whispered to the businessman sitting nearby, who merely nodded politely before returning to his newspaper. The father of the family caught Catherine's disapproving glance and offered an apologetic smile. She didn't return it, instead making a show of putting in her earbuds to block out the noise. But Catherine couldn't help continuing to watch the family from the corner of her eye. The boy's sneakers were scuffed and worn. The teenage girl's jeans had fashionable rips, but Catherine was certain they weren't the designer kind. The mother carried a handbag that Catherine recognized as last season's style, and certainly not authentic. Everything about them seemed ordinary, not the type of people Catherine typically encountered in first-class lounges. "Flight 1382 to New York is now boarding first-class passengers," announced the overhead speaker. Catherine gathered her belongings, relieved to escape the noisy family. To her surprise, they too began collecting their things. "Are you sure this is our flight, Dad?" the teenage girl asked, removing her headphones. "Yes, honey, that's us," her father replied, helping his son pack away the action figures. Catherine's eyebrows shot up. Surely they weren't in first class. She watched as they walked toward the same gate, the boy skipping ahead and nearly colliding with other passengers. At the gate, Catherine presented her boarding pass to the agent with a practiced smile. "Good morning," she said warmly, playing up her friendly customer persona. "Good morning. Ms. Walsh, you're in seat 2A. Enjoy your flight," the gate agent replied. Catherine nodded and stepped onto the jetway, mentally preparing for the 3-hour flight and the presentation that awaited her in New York. She'd request champagne right away, review her notes one final time, and perhaps catch 30 minutes of sleep before landing. A perfect plan, until she saw them again. The family from the lounge was being directed to the first-class cabin by a flight attendant. Catherine froze mid-step, causing the businessman behind her to nearly bump into her. "Excuse me," he murmured, stepping around her. Catherine continued walking, her mind racing. How could that family afford first-class tickets? The father's sweatshirt had a small stain on the sleeve, for goodness sake. The boy's shoes were practically falling apart. It didn't make sense. She took her window seat and arranged her belongings carefully in the overhead compartment and under the seat in front of her. When she looked up, the family was settling into the middle section just across the aisle. The boy was already playing with the seat controls, raising and lowering the footrest while giggling. "Thomas, please sit properly," his mother said quietly. "Remember what we talked about? Airplane manners." "But Mom, the chair moves by itself," Thomas replied, eyes wide with excitement. Catherine sighed loudly, making sure the parents heard her displeasure. The flight attendant approached with a tray of pre-flight drinks. "Would you care for champagne, orange juice, or water before takeoff?" "Champagne, please," Catherine replied, then added in a hushed tone, "And is there any chance I could switch seats? Perhaps something further from the commotion?" She tilted her head slightly toward the family. The flight attendant's professional smile remained fixed. "I'm sorry, but we have a full flight today. I'll be sure to check if anyone is willing to switch once we're airborne." Catherine accepted the champagne with a tight smile and took a generous sip. Across the aisle, the father was helping Thomas buckle his seatbelt, while the mother was sorting through a bag, pulling out books, tablets, and snacks for the journey. The teenage girl had already reclined her seat slightly and returned to whatever she was listening to on her headphones. "First time in first class?" Catherine asked the mother, unable to contain herself any longer. Her tone was friendly enough on the surface, but carried an unmistakable edge. The mother looked up, slightly surprised at being addressed. "Oh no, not exactly," she replied with a polite smile. "We fly quite often for my husband's work." "How nice," Catherine said, taking another sip of champagne. "It's just that your son seems very excited by the seats. Most frequent first-class travelers are used to such amenities." The father looked over now, his expression carefully neutral. "Kids are always excited by moving parts no matter how often they see them," he said simply. Before Catherine could respond, Thomas accidentally knocked over his orange juice, sending it spilling across the premium carpet. "I'm sorry," the boy exclaimed, eyes wide with worry. The flight attendant rushed over with napkins. "Don't worry, accidents happen," she assured him kindly. Catherine didn't bother hiding her eye roll. This was precisely why children shouldn't be in first class. She took out her phone and typed a quick message to her assistant. "Delayed boarding? Noisy family nearby, might need to reschedule first meeting." As the cleanup continued, Catherine noticed the mother pulling out what appeared to be business documents from her bag. The papers had colorful tabs and sticky notes attached, looking quite professional. For a brief moment, Catherine wondered what the woman did for work, but quickly dismissed the thought. Probably some entry-level position. The father was now helping Thomas set up a tablet, presumably to keep him occupied during the flight. The teenage girl caught Catherine staring and held her gaze for an uncomfortable moment before deliberately turning away. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a slight delay due to air traffic control," the captain announced over the intercom. "We expect to depart in approximately 20 minutes. Flight attendants, please remain seated." Catherine checked her watch and frowned. This delay could affect her entire schedule. She watched as the family settled in comfortably, seemingly unbothered by the wait. The mother even offered Thomas a small snack from her bag, completely ignoring the fact that first-class passengers would be served proper food once airborne. "Some of us have important places to be," Catherine muttered, just loud enough to be heard. The father looked over at her. "I'm sure we'll make up the time in the air," he said with a calm voice. "New York isn't going anywhere." Something in his confident tone irritated Catherine even more. Who was he to reassure her? In his worn sweatshirt and with his rambunctious child, he had no idea about the pressures of her professional life. Little did Catherine know that this family would soon turn her carefully planned day and her assumptions completely upside down. The 20-minute delay stretched into 45 minutes. Catherine's carefully planned New York schedule was unraveling by the minute, and her third glass of complimentary champagne wasn't helping her mood. Across the aisle, Thomas had settled down with his tablet, but now the teenage girl was quietly chatting with her mother, their hushed laughter occasionally breaking Catherine's concentration as she tried to review her presentation. "Ladies and gentlemen," the captain's voice crackled through the speakers. "I apologize for the continued delay. We've been informed of some minor mechanical issues that our team is addressing. We expect to be cleared for takeoff within the hour." Groans filled the first-class cabin. Catherine didn't bother hiding her frustration, shutting her laptop with more force than necessary. "This is ridiculous," she announced to no one in particular. "I have clients waiting." The father glanced over with a sympathetic nod. "Delays are frustrating. Hopefully they'll make it up in the air." Catherine wasn't looking for conversation with the family, especially not empty reassurances. She pulled out her phone despite the flight attendant's earlier instructions to keep devices in airplane mode. "Ms. Walsh," the flight attendant approached with a professional smile, "I'm afraid you'll need to switch your phone to airplane mode even while we're delayed at the gate." I'm trying to reach my clients to reschedule, Catherine replied, not looking up from her screen. Surely you understand that some of us have important business matters to attend to. The flight attendant remained politely firm. I understand, but FAA regulations still apply. You're welcome to step back into the terminal if you need to make calls. With an exaggerated sigh, Catherine stood up. Fine, I'll be back shortly. As she moved to leave her row, Thomas suddenly unbuckled his seatbelt and darted into the aisle, chasing after his action figure that had somehow been launched from his hands. Thomas, wait, his mother called, but it was too late. The boy collided directly with Catherine, his small body bouncing off her legs and sending her stumbling backward. Her phone clattered to the floor, sliding under a nearby seat. I'm sorry, Thomas exclaimed, eyes wide with genuine remorse. I didn't see you. Catherine steadied herself against a seatback, face flushing with anger. Watch where you're going, she snapped. This is exactly why children don't belong in first class. Thomas's father was immediately on his feet, placing protective hands on his son's shoulders. He apologized, ma'am. It was an accident. An accident that wouldn't have happened with proper parenting, Catherine retorted, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. She bent down awkwardly in her pencil skirt to retrieve her phone, inspecting it for damage. Do you have any idea how much this device costs? Probably more than your entire outfit. The mother joined her husband now, her expression calm but her eyes flashing with controlled anger. That's quite enough. Our son said he was sorry. Catherine looked the woman up and down, taking in her simple blouse and jeans. I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking. There are certain standards in first class that clearly not everyone understands. A few uncomfortable passengers pretended to be absorbed in their magazines or devices. Others watched the confrontation unfold with undisguised interest. I think we all understand standards of basic human decency, the father replied evenly. Come on, Thomas. Back to your seat. Catherine wasn't finished. The champagne, the delay, and now this collision had pushed her past her usual filter of keeping impolite thoughts to herself. You know, there's a reason they price these seats the way they do. It's meant to create a certain environment for people who appreciate quality. The teenager removed her headphones, her expression incredulous. Is she for real, Dad? Alexa, please, her mother cautioned quietly. Catherine smirked at the confirmation of her suspicions. They clearly didn't belong here. They probably got upgraded through some loyalty program loophole or employee benefit. People who actually earned first class knew how to behave in it. The flight attendant returned, sensing the tension. Is everything all right here? Just a misunderstanding, the father said before Catherine could respond. We're fine. Catherine straightened her blazer, deciding this battle wasn't worth missing her phone calls for. I'll be back in 10 minutes, she informed the flight attendant, then added with a pointed glare at Thomas. Try to keep the cabin under control while I'm gone. As she strode down the aisle toward the exit, she heard Alexa's whispered, "What's her problem?" and felt a small flush of vindication. Let them talk about her. She wasn't the one who didn't belong. In the terminal, Catherine paced while rescheduling her first meeting. Her assistant was understanding but sounded harried, trying to rearrange her packed day. Just push everything back an hour, Catherine finally decided, and book me a car service for when I land. I can't afford any more delays. When she returned to the plane 15 minutes later, the atmosphere in the first-class cabin had shifted. The captain had announced another 30-minute delay, and the flight attendants were offering a light meal service to appease the increasingly restless passengers. We apologize for the inconvenience, a different flight, attendant told Catherine as she took her seat. Would you like the chicken salad or the Mediterranean plate? Mediterranean, I suppose. Catherine sighed, noting with irritation that Thomas and his family were already enjoying their meals. The boy seemed to have completely forgotten their collision, happily dipping bread into hummus while his sister scrolled through something on her phone. Catherine's phone buzzed with an email notification, and she frowned at the screen. Her largest potential client had decided they couldn't wait and had rescheduled with one of her competitors instead. The entire purpose of her rush to New York was evaporating before her eyes. Bad news? The mother asked, noticing Catherine's expression. Catherine was surprised by the question. Why would this woman attempt conversation after their earlier exchange? Nothing I can't handle, she replied curtly. The mother nodded, seeming to accept the brush-off. She turned back to her family, but not before Catherine noticed the legal brief spread across her tray table. One document bore the letterhead of Williams and Porter, a prestigious law firm Catherine recognized immediately. For the first time, Catherine felt a flicker of uncertainty about her assessment of the family. Could the woman be a legal assistant at the firm? But why would a legal assistant be traveling first class with her family? Before she could consider it further, the captain's voice returned with better news. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been cleared for departure." Flight attendants prepare the cabin for takeoff. A collective sigh of relief spread through the cabin. Catherine fastened her seatbelt and closed her eyes, trying to salvage her mental preparation for the meetings that remained on her schedule. The plane finally backed away from the gate, taxiing toward the runway. Catherine glanced out the window, watching the ground crew become smaller as they pulled away. "Look, Dad," Thomas exclaimed, pressing his face against his window. "Those are the private jets over there. Can we get one someday?" "We'll see, buddy," his father chuckled. "For now, let's just enjoy this flight." Catherine couldn't help but roll her eyes at the child's naive excitement. Private jets were for people like her clients, not for families who were clearly stretching their budget just to sit in first class. The very thought was laughable. As the plane accelerated down the runway, Catherine tried to focus on her upcoming presentation rather than the family across the aisle. But something about them continued to nag at her. The mother's legal documents, the father's quiet confidence, even Alexa's designer headphones, which Catherine had initially assumed were knockoffs, now seemed potentially genuine. Who exactly were these people? And why did she care so much about placing them in a neat categorized box in her mind? The answers would soon arrive, in a way Catherine could never have anticipated. The flight attendant's voice came over the intercom an hour into their journey. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to unexpected weather conditions ahead, we'll be making an unscheduled landing at Charlotte Douglas International Airport. We apologize for the inconvenience." A collective groan spread through the cabin. Catherine closed her eyes and pinched the bridge of her nose. This day couldn't possibly get any worse. "Once we land, please remain in your seats until further announcements," the flight attendant continued. "We'll update you on the status of our journey to New York as soon as we have more information." Catherine pulled out her phone, ready to text her assistant the moment they landed. Across the aisle, Thomas looked disappointed, but his mother was already explaining something to him in a calm, reassuring voice. The father had his arm around Alexa, who seemed more annoyed by the delay than upset. "They should have known about the weather before we took off," Catherine muttered to the businessman seated next to her. He shrugged. Sometimes these things develop quickly. Nothing to be done about it now. The landing in Charlotte was smooth, but the mood in the cabin was anything but. As promised, the flight crew asked everyone to remain seated while they got more information. 10 minutes stretched into 20 and then 30. Catherine's patience was wearing thin. Finally, the captain's voice crackled through the speakers. "Folks, I'm afraid I have some difficult news. The weather system between here and New York has intensified, and air traffic control has grounded all flights heading north for at least the next 3 hours. We're working with our team to determine the best course of action." The cabin erupted in frustrated conversations. Catherine didn't bother hiding her exasperation. "This is completely unacceptable," she announced loudly. "Some of us have crucial business in New York today." The flight attendant approached with a sympathetic expression. "We understand your frustration, Ms. Walsh. We'll be allowing passengers to deplane shortly if they wish to stretch their legs or get something to eat in the terminal. We'll make announcements about our departure time as soon as we know more." Catherine gathered her belongings with sharp, angry movements. Her entire day was ruined now. There was no way she'd make even her rescheduled meetings. Across the aisle, Thomas's family seemed to be having a quiet discussion. "I should call Uncle David," the father was saying. "He might be able to help." "Good idea," his wife replied. "I have his number here somewhere." Catherine rolled her eyes, as if some Uncle David could fix a grounded flight. These people were delusional. When the flight attendant finally announced they could deplane, Catherine was one of the first passengers on her feet. She needed caffeine and a quiet spot to salvage what was left of her workday. She brushed past Thomas and his family without a glance, hurrying down the jetway and into the terminal. Charlotte's airport was busy but not packed. Catherine located a premium lounge and flashed her membership card at the attendant. Inside, she found a secluded corner, ordered a double espresso, and pulled out her laptop. The meetings in New York might be a lost cause, but she could still make some productive use of her time. She'd been working for about 20 minutes when a familiar voice broke her concentration. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Catherine looked up to find Thomas's mother standing beside the empty chair across from her. The woman was holding a cup of tea and wearing a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Actually, I'm trying to work," Catherine replied coldly. "This will only take a moment," the woman said, sitting down anyway. "I think we got off on the wrong foot earlier." Catherine saved her document with a sharp click. "Look, I'm sorry if I seemed harsh with your son, but when you bring children into adult spaces, you need to keep better control of them." The woman's smile remained fixed, but something flashed in her eyes. "My name is Diane Reynolds," she said, extending her hand. "And you are?" Catherine hesitated before briefly shaking the offered hand. "Catherine Walsh." "Well, Catherine, I thought it might be helpful if we cleared the air. We're all stuck here together after all." Catherine checked her watch pointedly. "As I mentioned, I have work to do." Diane sipped her tea, seemingly unbothered by Catherine's dismissiveness. "I couldn't help noticing your marketing presentation on your screen earlier. Are you heading to New York for a client pitch?" Catherine was surprised by the specific observation. "Something like that," she admitted reluctantly. "Which industry?" "Pharmaceuticals," Catherine replied, wondering why she was even engaging in this conversation. "Look, Mrs. Reynolds, Dr. Reynolds, actually," Diane corrected gently. "I practice family law, not medicine, but the title still applies." Catherine blinked. "A lawyer? That would explain the Williams and Porter documents, but still the casual clothing, the boisterous child. It didn't fit her image of a successful attorney." "I see," Catherine said, recalibrating slightly. "Well, Dr. Reynolds, I appreciate the attempt to make conversation, but I really do need to focus on my work." "Of course," Diane replied, standing up. "I just wanted to suggest that making assumptions about people based on appearances isn't always productive." Catherine felt her face flush. "I wasn't making assumptions. Some of us have important places to be." Diane quoted Catherine's earlier words back to her. "Certain standards in first class that not everyone understands. Those sound like assumptions to me." Catherine's embarrassment quickly shifted to defensiveness. "Look, I didn't mean anything personal by it, but you have to admit your family doesn't exactly present as typical first-class passengers." Diane's eyebrows rose. "And what does a typical first-class passenger look like exactly?" Catherine gestured vaguely. "You know what I mean. Professional attire. Quieter demeanor. It's an unspoken code." "A code based on appearances," Diane nodded. "I see." "It's not just appearances," Catherine insisted, feeling increasingly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "It's about respect for the environment and other passengers who paid for a certain experience." "And what sort of experience did you pay for, Catherine?" "One without families? Without children? Without people who look like us?" The implication hung in the air between them. Catherine's discomfort deepened. "That's not what I meant at all," she said, her voice losing some of its edge. "I would feel the same way about any disruptive passengers." "I wonder if you would," Diane said quietly. "My husband is giving a keynote address at the National Medical Conference in New York tomorrow. I have a case before the Federal Appeals Court the day after. Alexa is presenting her science research at Columbia University's high school competition. Even Thomas has a purpose for this trip beyond disrupting your precious quiet." Catherine was at a loss for words. Before she could formulate a response, Diane's phone buzzed. She checked the screen and smiled. "If you'll excuse me, I need to rejoin my family. Our alternative transportation has been arranged." As Diane walked away, Catherine felt a strange mix of embarrassment and curiosity. Alternative transportation? What did that mean? Probably a different commercial flight or perhaps a train. Catherine tried to return to her work but found herself distracted. The encounter with Diane had left her feeling off balance. She'd clearly misjudged the woman, but she wasn't ready to admit she'd been entirely wrong in her assessment of the family. 20 minutes later, Catherine's phone buzzed with a flight update. Their plane was still grounded for at least another 2 hours. With a sigh, she packed up her things and decided to find something to eat. As she walked through the terminal, she spotted Thomas and his father near a large window overlooking the tarmac. The boy was pointing excitedly at something outside. Curiosity got the better of her, and Catherine slowly approached, staying far enough away that they wouldn't notice her. "Is that really ours, Dad?" Thomas was asking, his face pressed against the glass. Just for today, his father replied with a smile. Uncle David came through for us. Catherine followed their gaze and felt her stomach drop. Outside on the tarmac sat a sleek private jet, its door open with a staircase extended. A uniformed attendant stood at the bottom, checking something on a tablet. Surely they weren't talking about that plane. It had to be a coincidence. But then she saw Diane and Alexa walking toward the same window, carry-on bags in hand. They're ready for us, Diane told her husband. The pilot says we can be in New York in just over an hour. Catherine froze, unable to look away as the reality of the situation began to dawn on her. The family she'd been looking down on, the people she'd assumed couldn't afford first class without some special deal, were about to board a private jet while she remained stuck in the airport. Who exactly were these people? Catherine stood frozen by the large terminal window, watching as an airport staff member approached the Reynolds family. The employee wore a crisp uniform and carried himself with the distinctive deference reserved for VIP customers. Dr. Reynolds, he addressed the father with a respectful nod. Everything is prepared for your departure. We've received clearance from air traffic control for takeoff in approximately 20 minutes. Thank you, James, Dr. Reynolds replied, shaking the man's hand. We appreciate you arranging this on such short notice. Not at all, sir. Your friend Mr. Chen made it very clear that you were to receive priority service. Catherine's mind raced. Mr. Chen? As in David Chen? The tech billionaire whose company was one of the largest pharmaceutical investors in the country? The same David Chen who was the Uncle David they had mentioned earlier? Will you be needing anything else before you board? James asked. Actually, Diane said, glancing at her watch, could you check if any other passengers from our original flight are heading to the medical conference? They might appreciate joining us if there's room. James nodded. Of course, Dr. Reynolds, I'll inquire discreetly. As the airport staff member walked away, Catherine stepped back, not wanting to be caught eavesdropping. Her head was spinning. The scruffy-looking man in the worn sweatshirt was also a doctor, and apparently one important enough to have a private jet sent for him by a tech billionaire. Catherine retreated to a nearby seating area, watching from a distance as several other passengers were approached by airport staff. Two well-dressed men nodded eagerly and quickly gathered their belongings. They were clearly headed to the same medical conference. The Reynolds family began walking toward the exit that led to the tarmac. Thomas was practically skipping with excitement, while Alexa typed something on her phone. Catherine noticed how other airport staff seemed to recognize the family, nodding respectfully as they passed. Without thinking, Catherine found herself following at a distance. She wasn't sure what she was doing. Did she want to apologize? Satisfy her curiosity? Either way, her feet carried her toward the same exit. Excuse me. A security officer stopped her. This area is for authorized personnel and private charter passengers only. I need to speak with the Reynolds family, Catherine stammered, gesturing toward the group now descending the stairs to the tarmac. The officer raised an eyebrow. Do they know you're coming? Not exactly. I was on their flight from Atlanta. It's important. The man seemed unconvinced. I'm sorry, ma'am, but unless you're on the manifest or they've specifically requested your presence, I can't allow you through. Catherine watched helplessly as the family disappeared from view. Through the window she could see them crossing the tarmac toward the gleaming private jet. Its sleek white body bore a small logo she recognized immediately. Chen Technologies, one of the largest biotech firms in the world. Fine, she sighed, turning away. Thank you anyway. As she walked back toward the main terminal, Catherine spotted James, the staff member who had assisted the Reynolds family, speaking with a distinguished older woman near the first-class lounge. Dr. Reynolds was very specific about upgrading anyone from the medical conference, James was saying. If you're presenting at tomorrow's keynote session, we'd be happy to include you on their flight to New York. The woman shook her head. Thank you, but I've already made other arrangements. Please give Robert my regards and tell him I look forward to his presentation tomorrow. His work on pediatric neural implants has been revolutionary. Catherine nearly stopped in her tracks. Pediatric neural implants? She recalled a recent article in the business section of her morning newsfeed. A groundbreaking medical innovation that had taken the medical world by storm. The developer was a Dr. Robert Reynolds, who had turned down hundreds of millions from pharmaceutical companies to keep the technology accessible to all children who needed it. That same Dr. Reynolds had apparently been sitting across from her in his comfortable sweatshirt, patiently enduring her rudeness while his son played with action figures. Catherine felt a wave of shame wash over her. She had spent the entire day judging this family based on nothing but appearances and her own preconceptions. She made her way to the airport bar and ordered a glass of wine. The television mounted on the wall was tuned to a news channel, and Catherine's blood ran cold when she saw Dr. Reynolds' face on the screen. The caption read, "Medical pioneer Dr. Robert Reynolds to unveil new technology at conference." The bartender noticed her staring. "That guy's something else, isn't he? My nephew has one of his neural implants. Changed his life completely. You know about him?" Catherine asked weakly. "Are you kidding? He's practically a celebrity in the medical world. Turned down billions to keep his technology affordable. His wife's some hotshot lawyer who takes on big pharmaceutical companies that try to price gouge patients. They're like healthcare superheroes or something." Catherine took a large gulp of her wine. "And their children?" The bartender shrugged. "Don't know much about them. Though I heard their daughter invented some kind of water filtration system for developing countries when she was like 14. Won some big science prize." Every word felt like a punch to Catherine's stomach. While she'd been looking down on Thomas for his worn sneakers, he was the son of two people who were quite literally changing the world. Catherine's phone buzzed with another flight update. The delay had been extended again, with no departure time in sight. She would definitely miss all her meetings now. Out of curiosity, she typed Dr. Robert Reynolds neural implants into her phone's search engine. Thousands of results appeared instantly. Articles from medical journals, news features, and charitable foundation websites filled her screen. There was even a documentary about his work. One photo showed the Reynolds family at a gala, Diane in an elegant gown, Robert in a tuxedo, Alexa in a sophisticated dress, and Thomas in a child-sized suit, all of them smiling warmly at the camera. They looked nothing like the casual family she'd encountered on the plane, yet somehow exactly the same. Another article mentioned their commitment to living normally despite their wealth and status. "We don't want our children growing up in a bubble," Dr. Reynolds was quoted as saying. "Sometimes that means flying commercial instead of private, wearing regular clothes and letting them experience the world as it really is." Catherine closed her eyes, mortification washing over her. She had been so quick to judge, so eager to put them in a box based on superficial observations, and they had known exactly what she was doing the entire time. Through the window, she could see the Chen Technologies private jet taxiing toward the runway. The family that she had deemed unworthy of first class was now literally flying above everyone else. Not because they flaunted their wealth and status, but because they had actual, important work to do in New York. An older gentleman sat down at the bar next to her, ordering a scotch. He looked tired but distinguished in his tailored suit. "Rough day?" he asked, noticing Catherine's expression. "You could say that," she replied. "I just made a complete fool of myself." The man chuckled sympathetically. "We all have those days. I was supposed to be in New York by now for the medical conference, but this weather had other plans." Catherine's interest piqued. "You're attending the medical conference? Do you know Dr. Reynolds by any chance?" "Robert, of course. We were residents together at Johns Hopkins. Brilliant man. One of the most down-to-earth people you'll ever meet despite everything he's accomplished." The man offered his hand. "I'm Dr. William Taylor, by the way." Catherine shook his hand weakly. "Catherine Walsh, so—" "They're really as impressive as they seem." Dr. Taylor smiled. "Even more so. Robert and Diane could live like royalty if they wanted to. But they've always been focused on their work and raising those kids right. They're the real deal." The private jet was now taking off, climbing steeply into the sky. Catherine watched it disappear into the clouds, wondering if she would ever get the chance to apologize for her behavior. Little did she know, fate had other plans, and her path would cross with the Reynolds family once more in New York City. Catherine finally arrived in New York 8 hours behind schedule. Her meetings had all been canceled, and the client she'd been so desperate to impress had already signed with her competitor. As the taxi crawled through Manhattan's evening traffic, she felt oddly detached from the disappointment. For hours, her thoughts had been consumed by the Reynolds family and her own behavior. Her company had booked her at the Westfield Hotel, a luxury establishment in Midtown. As she checked in, the receptionist smiled politely. "You're here for the medical conference, Ms. Walsh?" "No," Catherine replied, then hesitated. Well, not exactly. I'm not attending, but I'm interested in it. We're fully booked because of the event. Dr. Reynolds's keynote tomorrow has attracted quite a crowd. The receptionist handed her the key card. You're in room 1542. Enjoy your stay. Catherine's stomach tightened at the mention of Dr. Reynolds. Of course he would be staying at the same hotel. The universe seemed determined to remind her of her mistake. In her room, Catherine kicked off her heels and sat on the edge of the bed. She'd spent her career cultivating an image of success, believing that appearances mattered above all else. Designer clothes, premium services, first-class everything, these were the markers of importance, or so she had thought. Yet the truly important people she'd encountered today hadn't needed any of that to validate their worth. They wore their accomplishments lightly, focused more on their work than on appearances. After a long shower, Catherine ordered room service and opened her laptop. She found herself searching for more information about the Reynolds family. Article after article detailed their accomplishments: Robert's medical breakthroughs, Diane's landmark legal cases fighting for patient rights, Alexa's science awards, even Thomas's involvement in testing child-friendly interfaces for his father's medical devices. One photo showed Thomas in a hospital playroom, demonstrating a neural implant controller to other children. His worn sneakers were visible in the shot, the same sneakers Catherine had scoffed at on the plane. She closed her laptop, unable to read more. Tomorrow, she would find a way to apologize before flying home. Morning arrived with gray skies and light rain. Catherine dressed carefully in her most professional outfit and made her way to the hotel's grand ballroom, where a sign announced Annual Medical Innovation Conference. Keynote speaker, Dr. Robert Reynolds. People were already lining up outside, though the talk wouldn't begin for another hour. Catherine stood at a distance watching. Medical professionals, students, journalists, and even some patients with visible medical devices chatted excitedly as they waited. He's revolutionized pediatric neurology, one young doctor was saying. My professor says he's a lock for the Nobel Prize. I'm more impressed by how he's kept it affordable, replied his colleague. Any other inventor would have cashed in. Catherine felt increasingly out of place. These people admired Dr. Reynolds for reasons that went far beyond status or appearances. They saw what she had failed to see, the substance of a person rather than the packaging. As she turned to leave, she nearly collided with someone coming around the corner. Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't. Catherine froze. Standing before her was Diane Reynolds, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, her hair styled elegantly. She looked every bit the successful attorney now, nothing like the casual mother from yesterday's flight. Recognition flashed in Diane's eyes. Ms. Walsh, what a surprise. Catherine felt her face grow hot with embarrassment. Dr. Reynolds, I was just... Are you attending Robert's talk? Diane asked, her expression neutral. No. Actually, I was hoping to find you or your husband, to apologize. The words came out in a rush. My behavior yesterday was inexcusable. I made assumptions based on, well, nothing of substance. I'm truly sorry. Diane studied her for a moment. That's very honest of you. I've spent the past day feeling completely mortified, Catherine admitted. I pride myself on being a good judge of character, but yesterday proved how wrong I can be. A small smile touched Diane's lips. We all make mistakes in judgment. The question is what we learn from them. Before Catherine could respond, Thomas appeared looking sharp in a child-sized blazer over a colorful t-shirt. His sneakers, Catherine noticed, were still the same worn pair from yesterday. Mom, Dad's looking for you. He's nervous about his speech. The boy stopped when he noticed Catherine. Hey, you're the angry lady from the plane. Thomas, Diane chided gently. Sorry, he said, though he didn't look particularly apologetic. Dad says I should be polite even to rude people. Despite everything, Catherine found herself smiling. Your dad sounds very wise. And you're right to call me out. I was very rude yesterday, and I'm sorry about that. Thomas considered this. That's okay. Uncle David says sometimes people are mean because they're scared or having a bad day. Were you having a bad day? The simple question caught Catherine off guard. Yes, but that's no excuse. Do you want to come hear my dad's speech? He's going to show how his brain computers help kids walk again. It's pretty cool. Catherine looked to Diane, who nodded slightly. We have a few extra passes for the VIP section if you're interested. The offer was more generous than Catherine deserved. I'd like that very much, thank you. 20 minutes later, Catherine found herself seated in the front row next to Alexa, who was helping Thomas set up a tablet to record their father's speech. Dr. Robert Reynolds stood off stage, reviewing notes with a conference organizer. In his tailored suit, he looked completely different from the casual father in the airport, yet Catherine recognized now the same quiet confidence he'd displayed yesterday. He gets nervous every time, Alexa explained, noticing Catherine watching him. Even though he's done this dozens of times. Your father seems like a remarkable man, Catherine said. Alexa's expression softened slightly. He is. Both my parents are. That's why it was so weird yesterday watching you look down on them. We're used to people treating Dad like a celebrity once they know who he is. But he says that's just as fake as treating people poorly because you think they're nobody. Catherine felt the truth of those words. Your father is right. I'm learning that lesson the hard way. The lights dimmed, and the audience applauded as Dr. Reynolds took the stage. His presentation was captivating, technical enough for the medical professionals but accessible to lay people like Catherine. He spoke passionately about making healthcare technology available to all children, regardless of economic status. Every child deserves the chance to run, to play, to live without limitation, he said toward the end. The moment we start treating healthcare as a luxury for the privileged is the moment we've failed as a society. Catherine glanced at Diane, wondering if the words were meant for her. But Dr. Reynolds' sincerity was genuine. This wasn't about her or yesterday's incident. It was his life's mission. After the standing ovation, Catherine was invited to join the family for lunch in a private dining room. Several important medical and tech executives were there, including David Chen himself, who greeted the Reynolds family with warm hugs. Catherine works in pharmaceutical marketing, Diane explained as she made introductions. She was on our original flight from Atlanta. David Chen shook her hand. Always good to meet people from the industry. What firm are you with? Westfield Marketing, Catherine replied. We specialize in launching new medical devices and treatments. Interesting, Robert said, joining the conversation. We're actually looking for a marketing partner for our new pediatric mobility device. Someone who understands our commitment to accessibility. Catherine blinked in surprise. I'd be happy to put you in touch with our team. Or perhaps you could tell us about your approach yourself, Diane suggested. We're having a strategy meeting tomorrow morning. The offer was unexpected and generous, a professional opportunity Catherine had done nothing to deserve. She found herself speechless. You'd be doing us a favor, Robert added. Most marketing firms we've met with don't understand why we insist on keeping prices accessible. They keep pushing luxury positioning. Catherine thought about how she would have approached their product just 2 days ago and felt a wave of clarity. I think I understand your vision better now than I would have before. As lunch continued, Catherine observed the Reynolds family interacting with the other guests. They treated everyone, from the CEO of a hospital system to the server refilling water glasses, with the same genuine respect. Their worth wasn't determined by appearances or status, but by actions and character. On her flight home the next day, Catherine sat in coach, having voluntarily downgraded her ticket. As the plane took off, she opened her notebook and began sketching ideas for the Reynolds marketing campaign, one focused on accessibility, dignity, and looking beyond appearances. She had arrived in New York expecting to close a business deal. Instead, she was returning home with something far more valuable, a new perspective on what truly matters when measuring a person's worth.